evening. My name is Lorraine Schrader, class of 1997. Welcome to our 5th Kenyon Women Giving Back virtual event. We're so fortunate to have you all here with us this evening. We have a unique opportunity featuring Elizabeth Poett, class of 2003, for a discussion on food, history, and community. I, along with all the other women of our Kenyon Women Giving Back Steering Committee, hope this series will help build a deep connection with Kenyon across the women of generations. I would like to introduce our moderator for this evening, Jeff Bowman. He is currently provost at Kenyon, having recently served as acting president until the arrival of President Julie Kornfeld. As provost, Bowman has been committed to educational excellence, providing valuable support to faculty as they met unprecedented challenges of COVID. That's an understatement, right? He played a critical role in shaping and realizing the vision for Kenyon's next century and advancing the key elements of the strategic plan, including programming for computing, nurturing global curriculum, continuing to build structures to support student success in college and after graduation. Before his appointment as provost, Bowman held progressive positions of leadership within faculty and administration. These included associate provost and chair of the faculty. Provost Bowman joined Kenyon's faculty as a member of the history department in '97, just as I was leaving. Since then, he has taught courses related to Europe and the Mediterranean between 300 and 1500 CE, the history of Spain and Portugal, food history, travel narratives, and the varied interactions of Jews, Christians, and Muslims in the pre-modern Mediterranean. He is committed to promoting and supporting transdisciplinary, inclusive, and global curriculum for the 21st century. Provost Bowman was Elizabeth's faculty advisor for her history honors thesis, which made him a perfect moderator for us this evening. They have many parallel interests, and we welcome him and thank him for joining us in this capacity today. Jeff, take it away.
Hey, thank you, Lorraine, for that generous introduction. It is great to be here. It's great to see you all, and great to have a chance to connect with Elizabeth and to talk about her current projects and how they relate to Kenyon and other things. So one little bit of kind of business. You're all on mute to enhance audio quality, and we'll be sure to give you a chance to ask questions at the end of the session, and you can do this in one of two ways.
Jeff, you're on mute, Jeff. Sorry about that.
Have I been the whole time? That was all just...
No, we just for a second.
Okay. So you can submit questions one of two ways. You can either, if you think of something during our conversation, you can send it the submit question, or alternately, you can wait until the end of the session when we open it up and use the raise hand feature. So as Lorraine mentioned, Elizabeth Poett, class of 2003, is a former student of mine. And she's enjoyed an illustrious career after Kenyon. She is, I think, of the many students I have taught in 26 years at Kenyon, the only 7th generation cattle rancher. And I actually think I've taught no 6th or 8th generation cattle ranchers. So it is really quite a distinction. There's not a lot of people in this category. She is the host of a cooking and lifestyle show called Ranch to Table, and which is one of the founding shows of the Magnolia Network, and she is the author of the Ranch Table cookbook. She's born and raised at Rancho San Julian her family's historic cattle ranch on California's Central Coast. And in 2007, she founded San Julian Beef, a business selling her family's ranch-raised, grass-fed beef directly to chefs and consumers. And they became popular with California cooks and local chefs and have been served across restaurants all across California. She's also the author of a blog, The Ranch Table, and hosts Ranch Table events throughout the year, including cooking workshops, educational events, and farm-to-table meals. So she recently released her first cookbook entitled The Ranch Table. And I will say that today in Bailey House, where the provost office is, it inspired a quite heated controversy about a recipe involving ricotta and deviled eggs that distracted many people who were trying to do the business of the college for about an hour and a half. And so that was kind of exciting. We have yet to test this, And we're eager to talk about this. Welcome, Elizabeth. We look forward to hearing about the place you grew up, your family's origins, the ranch, and what led you to Kenyon, and finally how Kenyon led you away from the ranch, but eventually back to the ranching community. So I know that's a lot, but let me pause for just a moment to let you say hi.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here. This is a real honor. It feels so odd. I had all like the going back to Kenyon jitters for some reason today of kind of thinking about my time at Kenyon and how much fun I really had. I talk about Kenyon all the time and how it was really one of my most favorite 4 years. And I just have loved to be able to be part of this. But yes, after Kenyon, I went off and moved to New York, and then I moved to LA, and I just wanted to always kind of go back to the ranch. And so that's where I really found, and Jeff really, I can't call you Jeff. I'm not even going to try. Professor Bowman. It's like trying to be cool. But I just found my way back to the ranch, and it's been a really interesting ride.
Great. So I want to start with something that's really important in the cookbook, which and in the other things that you've done with regard to food on the network and on the show, the podcast, and it has to do with place, right? So you talk about the Central Coast community in the middle of California. You're near Santa Barbara on the ranch, and I'm kind of wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what's special about this place, what community means in that area, and what the work that you've done at the ranch and in putting together these events and ultimately writing this cookbook, how you see them contributing to that community.
Definitely. I think one of the funny things about living here out on the ranch is community is so important, but also my neighbors are 15 miles away. Those are my closest neighbors. So it is a kind of a funny feeling to feel that we are very, very close with our neighbors and our community. The reality of ranch life, especially the ranch that we are running, is that we could never do all that we do because of our community, without our community. When we have huge gathers, if we're gathering a ton of cattle and if we're moving them into another pasture, we need help. We need our community to help us. And we, in exchange, we also go and help them. And so this has been something that I think leaving the ranch, I grew up here, I was born and raised here. And I think leaving the ranch and, going to the Midwest for college and then moving out east on the East Coast, it gave me a way to really separate myself from this way that I grew up. This was a way that was just kind of what I thought was normal, and this is what everyone does. And then I came back and I really realized what a special thing this is to create community within, whether it be a large community or a small community, and how much that is related to food. I started selling beef at farmers markets. And I also realized that was, of course, a whole other community of people who wanted to learn more about agriculture and wanted to learn more about the history of the ranch and how food is really made and prepared. And so I really wanted to kind of bring that all together and bring people to the ranch and let them really understand what ranch life is really all about, and then be able to have an amazing meal. And I've always felt that food really is just, number one, it fixes all problems, most problems. I'll say most problems a really good meal can fix. And also just being able to bring people together. So we have an amazing community in our area where we come together, and this book has really kind of been the dream of mine to be able to show and hopefully inspire people to connect more.
So I think so. I have a question about what led you to the writing of the book, but I think some of it is implicit in what you've said already. So how did it come to move from this kind of commitment about food and community and environment to writing the cookbook itself? And how do you feel like that's a representation of what you want to convey to people about your heritage and about the region and about yourself?
I think it really all started with coming back to the ranch, realizing I wanted to find my own place here. I was I knew I wanted to move back to the ranch. I was a history major. I didn't study ag. And I wanted to figure out where my place was here. I didn't want to work for my dad for the rest of my life as a cattle rancher, which I love working with cows, but I wanted to kind of create my own place. So I started doing the beef, and then that led me to doing these events. And then the events, I think what I feel like I've been trying to do over this time period is really be able to expand. We're only, we're a small spot on the whole country, and to be able to share this feeling of community and share this feeling of love and the importance of local agriculture wherever you are, and the importance of being able to connect with people with food is something that I've always wanted to share on a bigger view, a bigger space. And I think one of the reasons why I ended up doing the show was something that they were going to allow me to do, that to be able to kind of showcase on a larger, on a network that we could do that. And I think that this cookbook has been a book that I've wanted to do long before the show, but it's been something that I wanted to also, should be able to share with more people.
So, I mean, in case anyone missed it, among the other more subtle things that Elizabeth said in that message was the history majors can do anything, I think, right? Like, so in case you missed that all, that was in there. That was packed up in there about history majors can figure out things and go on and do all kinds of important work in all sorts of different fields. And let me ask a question it's a little bit about influence. And as Lorraine mentioned at the beginning, I teach a course on food history from time to time, and I'm interested in food, and food is very connected to place, as you know, and is important in the cookbook and in your other work. And I'm a little bit curious about like inspirations. I mean, I know I have in my own head senses of food writers and cookbook composers who have been very influential. So I mean, and this is maybe also connected to California in some way, because some of them, I mean, there's Julia Child spent much of her life in Santa Barbara. Alice Waters changed the way we eat. MFK Fisher spent most of her life in California. And I mean, so I have in my head a sort of biography of the cookbook writers and food writers who have profoundly influenced me. Marcella Hazan, there was, I think, a year in graduate school who I thought that, I thought that Paula Wolfert was my best friend, basically, right? And more recently, it's Kenji Lopez Alt and Yotam Ottolenghi. Nina Friedman either is a genius or she made a very good guess about the last gift she gave me. So thank you, Nina. I see you on the screen. So I'm curious, when you were kind of putting this together, or when you were gathering inspiration, if there are like so of course, I'm sorry, I'm reverting to type. I'm asking you for like a bibliography. I'm a history professor. I'm like, what are the things that you read that influenced you and moved you and made you think about how you wanted to move forward with your own projects?
Well, we do have a lot in common, because you had a little bit of mention. I'll tell everybody right before this meeting, he mentioned that he was going to ask. And of course, my two people that I immediately wrote down was Julie Child and Alice Waters, which you immediately mentioned right off the top. I would say that I feel that the people who have inspired me over in my cooking and in growing food has been mainly the people, to be honest, it's a lot of the people who have surrounded me, that when I'm working at the farmer's market, I feel like being able to talk to the farmers. I believe that the farmers who are growing their food they're always the best chefs when it comes to what they're growing, because they have to cook it every day. They're cooking it all the time. They're sick of it. So they're constantly thinking of amazing things to make with it. And I feel like I learned so much from them and inspired so much from them. I would say that my grandfather was an amazing cook. One of the things that he left me was his recipe index cards. And amazingly, it's also his mother's cards as well. And so it's all of the things that they actually, that all the recipes that he loved, all of the things that he loved to eat. And it has beautiful handwriting. You know, my great grandmother had this beautiful handwriting. And so it's really in all of these index cards. And to me, that is one way of being able to connect people through generations. I was really, really close with my grandfather, and he passed away before my kids were born. And I was really upset that he could not meet my kids. But at the same time, when I got this, it kind of gave me this new, it really truly inspired me, because it made me feel like I could cook recipes that he loved. And in a way, people are connected through generations through food, that they are able to eat this food that he loved, have those tastes that he loved, and that my great grandmother loved, who I never met. So that feeling of generational eating and bringing people together is something that I think really inspired me, and has inspired me in my cooking. I love looking back at, you know, some of his recipes have, like, you know, Jell-O, and I mean, it's very hot now. Jell-O's back. But, you know, I love that like 50s, 40s feel of the food that he would cook. And then even before that, with my great grandmother, a lot of her recipes are in Spanish, because my family is originally from Spain. And it's just really interesting, the things that, you know, I find a lot of olives that is very California food. And so it's something that, those are the things, actually, I think that I love. I definitely have a book. I don't read, I read cookbooks basically at night, and I love it. And I have them all stacked up by my bed. But I think, though, that in the end, I've always kind of wanted to do my own little historical research on these recipes.
So is one of these like the Mercedes enchiladas, is like, I mean,
Yes.
because these are in the book, some of the recipes that you and
Yes.
and you talk about.
I was able to bring these recipes, a handful of them, into the book, and those are the recipes that really actually I think hopefully that they've really, I mean, my hope with these recipes is that I think sharing recipes is very important, is something that, and if you can be able to go to your grandparents' house or your parents' house and write down things while they're cooking, because a lot of times, I mean, my mother is impossible. My mom is just like this, that. She's the Italian side. And so it's very hard to kind of rein it all in a recipe. But I think it's really an important way to be able to share those recipes throughout generations, and hopefully that will inspire others to kind of connect with their family recipes.
That's great. Thank you. I'm just wondering, this is a sort of comparative question about the two of us, which you can't possibly answer, but I'm wondering if the answer would be a little bit different if, like, your grandparents and great grandparents were Norwegians in Minnesota rather than ranchers in California, about like the value of the legacy foods, because I mean, lutefisk is not for the lighthearted, right? But let me ask a different question that sort of circles around that, and asks sort of not so much about the project and the work, but a little bit about your interest in history, which you talked about in terms of excavating these recipes and surfacing them for other people, but also about the importance of family history. But do you think this your experience and like growing up in a place that had been connected to your family for so long and in a multi-generational environment, did it have any connection to your interest in studying history?
Definitely. Definitely. I think that I think I studied history for many reasons. One, I've just always loved the feeling of the stories. I always felt connected to that. I definitely think I mean, when I was growing up, I wanted to dance ballet. And my mom, who is an Italian from New York, was like, absolutely not. You're blonde, blue-eyed, and growing up in California. Like, no, you're not going to dance also ballet. You're going to dance flamenco, and you're going to like really get into what is your history and where are you from. And so I started dancing flamenco when I was really, really young. I danced actually at Kenyon. I joined the rugby team. I was definitely part of the rugby team for many years, but I also danced. And one of the things I really wanted to do was study abroad. And I was able to study abroad in Spain and also continue dancing when I was in Spain. And so I wanted to do, I always was interested in history, Spanish history. I kind of grew up with my dad going on and on and on about our history. And so, yeah, it's definitely something that has connected me.
For as Lorraine mentioned at the beginning, Elizabeth was a student of mine, and she did an honors thesis that was about the press, freedom of the press, and less than freedom of the press in the 20th century in Spain, and Franco and the transition to democracy. It's right here.
Oh, no.
This is the thesis. The visuals are not as striking as in the book, like, so they're not as strong, but they're both very strong pieces of work in different areas. So you
Oh, are they? I don't know how strong of a
they are they're different.
Okay.
They're different fields, but they're both strong. So let me ask you, you mentioned Spain, and so I have a question that sort of is about history and food and community, and the way that you think about this now and have for a long time has to do with the ranch and the Central Coast region and that community. But you've lived in these other places, which have, also informed you. So I'm kind of curious about your experiences both here in Gambier and as a student abroad. If I remember correctly, you in your time in Seville, not only do you dance flamenco, but you acquired a kind of formidable Iberian lisp in your Spanish, which was quite impressive, right? And so do you have food memories of those places, of like Seville or Gambier, about something that you ate at Pierce with your friends that was like a very distinctive thing, or
Yeah,
foods
well,
of Andalusia that like left a mark on you? That
I mean, I actually I Spanish food 100% has left a mark. When I studied abroad, and I believe that is a huge game changer for people, and I really hope that kids are still going abroad and really enjoying it, because it really is an eye opener. So I moved there, and when I was there, I immediately like fell in love with all the pasteles and all the tapas and all the everything. I was like, that was my favorite thing in the whole entire world. And it definitely, I mean, I have like, I lived with a senora, and she made me this amazing, well, she made me paella almost all the time, but she also would make me this amazing hot chocolate, which I have in the book as well. And it just had a little bit of spices in it. And it was just one of those, like, they know their chocolate. The Spanish understand how to cook with chocolate and how to eat chocolate and how to drink chocolate. And I love chocolate. And so it was something that it was just like it's just a game changer for me when it came to food. I talk a lot about it on the show. I talk about it in the book. It's definitely something that really stayed with me for a long, long time. Pierce food. Well, it's so funny. To be honest, I think I enjoyed making my own things. So like, I think that there was a waffle maker at one point, and I really enjoyed making my own waffles, and loading it up. I think to me, though, I was so focused on the social part of it all, and being in Pierce, and just like sitting in the big hall. And I just have tons of memories of like the switch out and who sat where and where the swimmers sat and where these people sat. And I was usually always sitting with my girlfriend, that we just like went everywhere together. And to me, I feel like the food was more about was it like a social hour to be able to hang out with friends, which I think is important. I think it all kind of comes together. I think again, it's that feeling of food really brings people together. And it's an important thing, especially when we are in a world that is lots going on. And I feel like, there's a lot of good that's happening through food, and being able to be together.
So why do you think that is? Because I mean, you do come back to this about like sort of connections, a bunch of different kinds of connections, the connections between like the carefully prepared food and a beautifully set table, a connection between the people around a dining table, the connection between like the food and the place, right? Do you have a sense of why that is? Like, why sharing food together in an environment like that, like why is that so moving for people?
Well, I mean, I think to begin with, it is true, when people are hungry, people are grumpy. That is just like a known fact. This is something that we can all relate to. I have two little boys, and they call it they're hangry when they're hangry. It's when they're angry and hungry at the same time. I believe that is something that is true. And when we're able to get together around a table, whether it be I'm not into fancy stuff. I was not a culinary. I did not go to culinary school. I studied history. I've always had a love for food. I've always had a love for cooking, and I have learned along the way a lot of kind of tricks of the trade. But I am definitely a person who believes that when people come together, especially around food, there's something very, very special about that. And I think it's different with every meal, whether it's, even if it's the same people that get together every single day, whether it is your immediate family, where you sit down to dinner and you try to have a sit down once a day, or maybe at nighttime, or on Sundays, or on the weekend, or whenever. It's a different meal with just what you're bringing to the table. And so whether it be that, or whether it be a big fancy dinner or a celebration, I think that there is something very, very special when it has people around a table with food. And I think it's very hard to decide exactly what happens there, because every time people get together, it is different. And there is a magic though there.
And do you have a sense of when you came to know that magic? I mean, I think I totally agree with you, but I'm sort of wondering, I mean, you were talking about being at Pearson, you were focused on the social things, and I get that. That can be a distraction from, I mean, I know we often have dinner parties with people that are lovely and beautiful, and I am starving at the end of them. Like, everybody goes home and I was like, that was great. I haven't eaten anything. I'm about to fall over, right? But do you remember in your history of this, like feeling that as a very young person, or was this a thing that you came to kind of gradually, that kind of recognition about how important this was to people?
My job, and well, I think because my parents moved to the ranch the ranch has been in my father's side of the family for 7 generations. And when my parents moved here, they moved from New York. My dad had always wanted to come back to the ranch, but my mom was just a full-on New Yorker. And when they moved to the ranch, they really, my mom especially felt that community was very important because probably it could be really lonely out here. And bringing people to the ranch and bringing people to our home was something that happened many times a week. And my parents lived in this tiny, small house, still do, right on the ranch. And it had this really small dining room table that's round, and it's one of those that you can pull out and put leaflets inside and kind of make it bigger as you go. But my job was always to set the table. And it's something that I think as a very young child is something that I really had a lot of pride in. And it was something that I felt like I was just very proud of being able to set the table in the way that I wanted. I got to pick the plates, I got to pick the utensils. And my mom never had, a kids table, which at times as a mom, I'm like, that's a great idea. What are people doing? But I think growing up though, we didn't have that. And so I was always sitting there at the table with my family, and their friends, with the adults in these kind of adult conversations. And my parents had this old, kind of a chandelier, but the chandelier sounds fancy. It's like literally like wrought iron. And my mom would put her candles in there and we would light them. And there's just something that it's a ritual. It almost feels ritualistic. I can't say the word ritualistic. I can't say it. I'm not gonna say it. You'll say it for me. But it just is something that we're all coming together. And I think so from a very young age, I think I always wanted to, that to me felt like home and it felt safe. And I think when people feel safe and warm and full bellies, it's probably nothing better than that.
They're more likely to be their best selves. Yeah.
I believe that.
So this is a kind of switching a little bit. There's a sort of specific question about the recipes, right? Is there like a sort of recipe that's on the cutting room floor that didn't make it into the book because people said like nobody wants to see this recipe, or it wasn't practicable? I mean, I know I mentioned Alice Waters and I love Alice Waters, but as a person in Knox County, Ohio, the cookbooks that allow you to substitute, black truffles for white truffles are not like actually super, like it's not a huge concession that's very helpful. Or the ones that say like, no, you can't use commercially grown fennel, you have to harvest it yourself. You're like, well, okay, I guess I'm not making this, right? So is there something that for whatever reason, like a recipe that you had like a connection to, but like for reasons of like putting a book together, just couldn't make it in, that you can share with us, that you can tell us about, that's not there, that we can think about as we look at the book, right?
Well, I would say a couple of things. One, because this is my first book, I did feel like I was able to put in a lot of my kind of top ones that I just love, that I love. But definitely, I would say that there was more than one that I was not able to put in. It was really important. And I'm so glad you mentioned the thing about Alice Waters and just about cooking in general. Is one of the things I really wanted to make sure about with this book is that you could get these ingredients. These are ingredients that you go through and you're like, okay, I can find these things. One of the things that sometimes is very frustrating to me is like, okay, now I have to get online and order all of these ingredients because I don't have any of this. It was really important to me that these were kind of accessible things that anyone can cook, because again, I am a person who wants, the whole point of cooking to me is to have fun, enjoy it, be creative, and get people in the kitchen having fun with you. If there is any sort of a stress, forget it. Like to me, what's the point? Like, let's just all get in the kitchen and have a good time and be inspired and make these recipes and feel super proud about them afterward. And I think that there is that stress and perhaps pressure from having people over for dinner even. I've talked to a lot of my friends and they're like, oh, I don't know if I want to have people over for dinner because there's a pressure of like being the perfect meal and this and perfect, all this perfection. And that is something that I think we just throw away and get people together and have a really good meal. But I think what are things for me for this cookbook, I could have done a million more meat recipes, to be honest. Growing up on a cattle ranch, there's a handful of those that I really wanted to do. I love making my own chips, and that's something that I wanted to get in there. But to be honest, to me, it was almost like I actually have already put them on the wall. I'm definitely a person who needs to see everything. I think in history, I did the same thing too. When I would study, I would put things on the wall to kind of figure out lineages and such. And with my book, I have definitely put everything on the wall on all the recipes that I'm working on. So it's been something that I want to create another book. So that's my goal, is like, keep going.
Yeah. So it does seem to me that and the book does a great job of conveying that vibe and that spirit that you're talking about, which is really important, because it does feel like some books launch into it with a kind of they're like, here are the things to know, and the things to know are like, do you need a mandolin or do you not need a mandolin, rather than like, you're making dinner for people, you should relax and like be excited and joyful about that, not nervous and fraught. So that seems like the right energy, and I feel like I see that energy in the book. So do you know what the next book is? And this, I know, is nothing that we've talked about, but I'm just sort of curious. Do you have an idea in mind about like where you go from here? Or?
Well, I think I just want to keep, I think what I have found with this book is that I think that there is interest in this world of, the beauty of simplicity, the beauty of imperfection, and also the reality that things that are not perfect. And so my hope is to kind of continue on with that and be able to hopefully really create more. I'm a cattle rancher through and through. I'm born and raised here, and I love working with animals, but being able to do the cookbook and being able to do the show has been also a really great way, maybe in a way, as my mom was able to bring people into her kitchen and have that creative time, where I also feel like being able to write this book and be part of the show has been a real way that I can stay creative. And talking to cows is not that interesting, so it's been fun to be able to really live the life I want to live, living on a ranch, but also have that creative.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you. So I do want to said that we would turn to have questions from the other folks who are on the screen here, and I want to make sure that we've got time for that, because we've got a nice engaged bunch of folks here. And I think, Annie, do you have some, or is that
We
right?
do. We have some questions. So Ellen is curious, Elizabeth, to know about the incorporation of the historical and the new. And so her question is, she's wondering how the historical and family recipes merge when cooking for your own children. Do you make the same recipes? Do you change them in your own way, or make your own traditions?
I definitely, I take a lot of my grandfather's recipes and my great grandmother's recipes. There's a real art to first of all, writing a recipe and then cooking for my family. on the spur of the moment are very different for sure. Writing a recipe for me, I am a person who really believes that nothing is more frustrating when you pick up a cookbook and the recipe doesn't work. And so for me, like being very precise. And so I have found with my grandfather's recipes, things are not perhaps as precise as I would enjoy. So I definitely bring in more ways to explain and make things maybe sometimes a little different. For the kids, for sure, when I'm cooking for them, I definitely add like my own flavors and flavors that I know that they love, for sure. But being able to put those together has been really, really fun.
We have another question, which I find to be very interesting. What 3 people, living or dead, would you invite to a dinner party, and what would you serve?
Oh my goodness, that's a fun one. 3 people. Okay.
So would Manuel Fraga be one of them?
I
One of
know.
Franco's ministers of
Frank-
information?
Go. Nope, no, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think we would get along. I think, who would I want to invite? I would love to Julia Child, for sure. The energy, and I think that would be amazing. That would be nerve-wracking though. I would be nervous for that, but I would do it. Who else? I'm sorry. Was it dead or alive?
Yes, dead or alive, who would you invite?
I think Queen Elizabeth would be amazing. I think that would be really cool and interesting. Who else would I want? I think I want all women. I would also want I'm so sorry, I don't want to take up too much time.
So
sorry, yes.
Can
you
I
have an idea?
leap in though? Just leap in on the Julia Child thing, because I mean this is sort of like what you were talking about, because I mean she was like a highly technically proficient cook, and that was important. But I mean, like you're saying, I mean she was more about spirit than she was about technical execution. I mean, like any who have tried to make the filet de boeuf Prince Albert and the Mastering the Art of French Cooking might disagree, but she had co-authors there, right? I mean, she was much more typically about like, oh, well, you drop the turkey on the floor. What do? You put the turkey back on the platter because people have got to eat dinner. I think that makes...
It's actually because no one knows what happens in the kitchen.
No one knows what happens in the kitchen, exactly. She had that spirit
she had that
like sort of generosity, and like it was like technical proficiency was important, but like the spirit I think that you've described is one that resonated with her, where it's not the main thing. The main thing is feeding people.
Well, and I truly, with that juxtaposition between her and somebody like Queen Elizabeth, I love both. I love being able, the thought of, I love tradition. I love that feeling of, I would love to know about what it was like to grow up like her, and I would love to know what it would be like to grow up as Julia. So I think that those two would just be amazing. I love old movies. I grew up on black and white movies, which a lot of my crew for the show believes that is why I am the oddness that I am. But I grew up on all black and white movies. So Katharine Hepburn. I would also say Katharine Hepburn for sure. And what would I serve? I would serve some sort of an amazing cocktail, something probably with blackberries, with like a blackberry syrup. Depends on the time of year. I would want it grand and lots of candles and all my grandma's china.
Beautiful. So I'm never surprised at the Kenyon connections, and I have to mention this one from our very own Peggy Goodman, class of 73. Peggy wanted you to know, Elizabeth, that she worked with your parents in New York in the Village Voice when they met, and that she actually met you as a toddler in Los Angeles. So the Kenyon connections grow very deep. And so
Oh
these
my
things are
goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, email me and I would love to connect them to my parents. That's so great. I love that.
yes. And then we have a bunch of questions actually in here for you. What is your favorite memory when arriving at Kenyon, and what's your favorite location on campus?
My favorite, you mean my favorite memory of arriving on Kenyon campus?
Yeah,
I
you're
always,
right.
when I first came for a tour, it was the last college that I visited. My mom and I went on this amazing, like I still remember it so well. We went and visited all the East Coast colleges, and then we drove to Ohio. And it was the last school that we went to visit, and I just fell in love immediately. It was what everything that I imagined my life, what college would feel like. And I knew immediately. I ended up applying early decision. I was like sold. As soon as I came to campus, I knew I wanted to be there. I would say maybe Old Kenyon. I was on the 3rd floor. I lived there my senior year. And I just couldn't have been more happier to feel part of something that was so old. I just love that.
We had a lot of curious questions about where you lived when you were on campus, what dorms you lived in. So
Yes, so Old Kenyon my senior year. My sophomore year, I lived in, how does it go? Leonard, is there Leonard? And
Hannah is across from, yeah.
So it was Hannah. I lived in Hannah. I got a really large room with a roommate. It was supposed to be for 3, and somehow we got just the 2 of us. Freshman year, I can't remember the dorm, but freshman year. And then junior year, I also lived in Old Kenyon too. But then I went abroad.
So this may seem like a morbid question, Elizabeth, but I know there's a whole series of interviews that people do about what would be your last meal.
Yes. Oh goodness. My last meal. I think that I would probably do like, I'm kind of a steak gal. I would probably do like a ribeye steak with some sort of delicious, like a chimichurri sauce. I love all sorts of sauces. So something like that with a really huge, big, fresh green salad with butternut lettuce. And yeah, I think something like that. Butter would be involved. There'd be a lot of butter.
Elizabeth, do you still keep in touch with any of your former Kenyon friends, roommates? How deeply connected to your Kenyon community?
I do. A lot of them came to my wedding, which was really fun. I keep in touch with my 2 dear friends. They were next door. My 2 dearest friends from Kenyon ended up getting married. And we will all like live together on the same floor our freshman year. And they started dating freshman year and are now living in China together and touring the world. So I'm still very close with them.
Amazing. But those are all the questions I have for now. So I'll turn it back over to Jeff.
Great.
Great. Those were really good. I had one kind of last question that Elizabeth, you were talking about like the way that you feel like some of this journey started when you were very young with the setting of tables. And I'm kind of now I'm asking you to share about your kids and like, I don't know how old they are, but do they have the same interest in setting the table? Do they, are they excited
Yes.
about it? I mean, you mentioned that they occasionally got hangry, but I'm also wondering if they, at the other end of the spectrum, they understand the pieces that bring people together around the table.
Yeah, I think I have 2 boys. One is 9 and one is 12. They have their jobs to setting the table. They, know how to set a table really well. Would I say that they love their jobs? It's questionable, real questionable. I think they love their jobs in a way that I loved the ranch when I was younger, very much like them too. The thing about having this ranch, which is a real blessing, but it also is it's a responsibility to be able to, and it's not an easy one. And I think that there's a lot that has that's like the reality of it is just, it's a lot of work. And I think that it's really important. And my hope is that they, grow up and go away for a little bit. And really that's when you're able to see the beauty and what's so special about this place with really new eyes. I feel like that's something I definitely remembered coming to visit. I was living after college, I moved to New York, and I lived in this tiny hole in the wall apartment with another Kenyon grad. And it was really fun. We spent a lot of time with Kenyon grads out there, but I came home for like around March, and it was like sunny and warm, and I had just spent, my time in Ohio, and I spent my time now in New York, and it was still freezing in March. And I was like, oh my gosh, this place is amazing. And my dad's like, yeah, you grew up here. So I think I think that they're not exactly sure how special this place is yet.
They will figure it out. I'm confident. So
they will.
Yes. I have loved this conversation. As Lorraine mentioned at the beginning, I occasionally teach a course that I didn't teach when you were here, which is a Feast, Fast, Famine, Food in the Pre-Modern World course. And next time I do it, we will Skype you in, or maybe just come visit. I mean,
I would love that.
Come visit, right?
I would love that.
So this has been a lot of fun. Thank you. And I'm going to hand it back to Lorraine.
What an inspiring evening. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Jeff, for moderating us and really engaging us in some enlightening conversation. So on behalf of myself and the Kenyon Women Giving Back Steering Committee, again, thanks to all of those who attended tonight. We're glad you joined. Quick reminder that you can find a link on one of the upcoming slides to actually purchase the ranch table. And there's going to be a link in the chat as well, from not just anywhere, but from Kenyon's own bookstore. Felt like the most apropos place for you to be able to get this and support Elizabeth, a Kenyon author. So our event series will continue with another virtual event in March. We're shooting for the 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern, and there'll also be another event over reunion weekend. So all alumni, just as a reminder, are welcome back because of the bicentennial this year. It's a very special reunion. Kenyon women have played a critical role in our love for our alma mater and our history, and we will continue to make a significant impact on the future. So the mission of Kenyon Women Giving Back is to celebrate and amplify the impact that women are having on the college and the world, both by building connections and through other philanthropic support. So our gifts to the Kenyon Fund provide much needed support for all the things that we love about Kenyon, many of which we spoke about tonight. Thanks, Elizabeth and Jeff. The Kenyon Women Giving Back Steering Committee encourages you to consider a gift to the Kenyon Women's Annual Scholarship Fund, which could make an impact on female students today. So no matter how you choose to support Kenyon, your gift would directly enhance the educational experience of the Kenyon students who are following in your footsteps. So you can visit gift.kenyon.edu to consider a gift, and we'll also include that link in the chat. As well as, like I said, the information that you can get here from the slide. So in closing, we'll follow up with an email that includes other ways to access what you're seeing on your screen tonight. You will also get a link so that you can share tonight's event with other people who may not have been able to join us. And we would also welcome your feedback. So Gordon3, Gordon3 at kenyon.edu has graciously agreed to take any suggestions you have for future events or just hearing you rave about tonight's event. So we hope to see you there. Thanks again and good night.